Hey there, welcome to the More Miles podcast. I'm Lauren,
I'm Scott.
and we are part of the More Miles run coaching team. Zach and Michelle were not able to be with us today with scheduling conflicts, but we have two fill-ins for them today. We have Adam and Katie Lowe from Too Low Run Company joining us as our special guests today. Thanks for being here, guys. How are you?
Great. How are you?
Good.
Great.
Thanks for having us on.
Oh, thanks for being here. Thanks for making time for it. I know it's not easy to build time into your day to sit down and talk about yourselves and about running, and this is going to be fun. So we have been wanting to have you guys on for a while. Again, the husband and wife team behind Too Low Run Company. You guys are doing a ton in the community right now. So a lot of what I want to talk about is what you're doing, what you've been up to, how you are growing, and all of the things that you are doing in our local community. But before we even get to that, I want to talk about who you are as people behind the company and who you are as runners, because I think that's really a big part of the origin story of who Too Low Run Company is. So let's just get into it. Let's start right there. Katie, why don't we start with you first? When did running first enter your life? Have you always been a runner, or when did that become a part of your life?
Well, my dad was a high school girls track coach for my entire life. From when I was born, so I grew up going to track practices and doing little kids race events. But then when I got into the high school, that was the first level that we had any kind of team aspect. So I was on the track team there. I never ran cross country in high school because I was in volleyball and basketball. But then from high school, I went on and ran track, indoor, outdoor, and cross country for Robert Morris University for 2 years. After that, I'd had a little bit too much competition and was just a little burnout. So I took some time off from running. But ultimately, for physical fitness and how my body feels and everything, just came back into recreational running. Actually, at the influence of my mother this time. So, and since then, I've been running.
So going back real quick for a second to high school, college, when you did track cross country, what were your events? What were your favorites?
I was heavily into the relays, so I did, but mainly middle distance. So it was 400, 800. I also ran the shuttle hurdle relay, which is not an event in Maryland, but is an event all the time in West Virginia. So it's the 100 meters, 10 hurdles, low hurdles, and you go back and forth on the straight stretch of the track. And so I did that. And I also threw the discus. So
Really?
I was kind of a jack of all trades in high school. I kind of did the same thing when I went to college. Mainly, I went there for the 800, so they actually recruited me for that race specifically. But they considered that a distance event, so that's how I got onto the cross country team, which I wasn't too sure about at the time. Now I look back and think like, oh, okay, like distance, I can do that. But I never considered myself a distance runner prior to like the past few years, actually.
Where in West Virginia did you? Where in West Virginia did you grow up, Katie?
I went to Magnolia High School. You went to Ravenswood, is that right?
We were rivals. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
I could talk your ear off about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. That's actually the first thing I ever recognized about you was your Ravenswood shirt when you would go to races. So I was
Yep.
like, we used to always come up against Ravenswood in playoffs.
Yep. Small world.
So coming from the 800 being your specialty on the track, was cross country really long, really far?
Yeah. Yes, it was very long because I was actually an 800 runner. I feel like there's two different types of 800 runners. It seems like there's your distance people who drop down to the 800, or you have your sprinters who stretch themselves for the 800. I always trained with the sprinters. When I was in high school, I never went out. Actually, in 4 years of high school, I probably went out on long runs less than a handful of times, probably 2 or 3 times. So I was a sprinter who stretched to the 800, and and kind of liked it because I wasn't super fast at like the short stuff, 200. I couldn't get my legs moving quick enough to, by the time the 200 was over, I was just getting started. I felt like it. But, yeah, then my story that I always tell is right after the regional meet my senior year, we had a week in between that and the state, and we had an easy run. After the regional meet, we were just running 2 miles, short jog, up to a gas station to do a fundraiser for the track team. And I was like, okay, we're just jogging. Doesn't matter pace. I went out and about a mile into it, I was like, oh, I have to walk. I can't get that far. But I had just run my PR in the 800. I was probably in the best fast twitch, short distance, shape of my life. But trying to jog 2 miles, I had no idea, like pacing and any of that. I wasn't ready for it.
That's far.
Country was a whole new world for me. Like looking back, I guess I probably could have enjoyed it more, but it was just so out of my element at that time that, I was, out of my, it's like too far in the deep end for myself.
So taking a break after college and then getting back into it kind of maybe from a fitness perspective later in life, when did you really start running again? Like, was this like a 10, 15 year gap in between?
No, just a couple years. It was probably about a year and a half, 2 years. Truth be told, I went to WVU after I was at Robert Morris, and I lived the good WVU life and had fun and took in extra calories and wasn't burning them off. And so I did find myself in needing to lose weight, get back in shape. I hadn't been in that state prior to that because I had always been competitively running since I was 15 years old. So I knew what to turn to. The only thing I knew really was running. And I got back into it that way. And then my mom had taken up running in her younger 40s, I think. She had started wanting to do some races like half marathons, and she encouraged me to run with her when I would go home for the summer on college breaks, and then we'd start training for things together. Even if we weren't in the same town, if I was at school and she was at home, we'd be training for the same goal races. And we ended up training, I think it was maybe after undergrad. We ended up training, and I got into grad school, so I was still in Morgantown. We started training for the Chicago Marathon, which was my first, and I thought at the time would be my only marathon, but life has led me in a different direction. So that was not my only, but it was a long time. It was like 17 years ago I ran my first. 16 years later, I ran my second marathon. So I've kind of been running since that senior year of college just to get back in shape, and it's just gone ever since. I've had little brief hiatuses, but that's been my go-to whenever I come back to, putting my health and physical fitness as a priority again.
We'll come back around to where you are now from where you started. But let's go to you, Adam. How about you? When did running first become a thing in your life?
My experience is completely different than Katie's. In high school, I played soccer and lacrosse. And the cross-country coach and the soccer coach were both science teachers. So one time for practice, we had to run in the home cross-country meet. And I hated it. I finished like 21st place, and people were telling me like how good I did for my first race, but I had no idea. And my thought process was, I just got beat by 20 people. That's not good. So I didn't run again. That was in 2000. So I didn't probably run again until 2010. Like through college, I didn't run anything. I played like intramural sports and stuff, but I didn't do anything else. And then after graduating college, and I got a job, and then I just kind of gained weight a little bit. And then in 2009, 2010, at the very beginning, I was 215 pounds. And then I was like, I got to change. I got to do something. So I basically went to the computer and found the Marine Corps Marathon in January, because my sister had done the Marine Corps Marathon a couple years earlier. So I knew that about that race. And I had to sign up for a 10K that the Marines put on. It was called Run to Register in order to get like a code to run the marathon. So I just figured, okay, I'll run this 10K in March and then run a marathon in October. And I think the next day or a day later, I went out and tried to run a mile, and it was absolutely horrible. Like I think I finished the mile and then laid on the track and just couldn't believe what I signed up for. But I did run that first marathon I ran. That was in 2010, and I ran a 3:58. So after that, after a couple of days and my legs didn't hurt anymore, I was in love and I just kept running from there. So I took a long break as well, and I started just to kind of get like healthy again and lose weight. So
Now, did running bring you two together? How did you guys meet?
Yeah, actually, we worked at the same school. I had been there for 11, 12, 13 years, something like that. And Adam started working at the school as a health teacher. And he was also coaching on the cross country team. He was the assistant coach. And I remember whenever he was hired, I was like, oh, he took my job, because I used to be the assistant cross country coach at the school. But there had been years gap in between. But then our paths never really crossed. We weren't in the same department. He was outside in a portable, and so he barely came in the building. And one day there was an email that was sent out, and it was something like, Adam Lowe is going to be running the Boston Marathon this weekend. Let's wish him luck. And when I read that, I was like, oh, he's a runner. Like, he's really into running then. So I was like, oh. And then after that, I realized we were in the same Facebook group, the 100-day run streak group, which I wasn't super involved with, but I had gotten into it a couple years before that. But Adam was an admin in it, so he was constantly involved. And I never put the two things together. So one day when he was in the coffee room, I just struck up conversation. And then anytime our paths would cross, we talked about running. And then I started a streak, which gave us more to talk about. And we just developed a really good friendship for several months, mainly discussing running, the streak, like his marathons. I wasn't racing hardly at all at that time. I'd run maybe one race or two races a year at that point. And but it just gave us a common ground, and we just built that friendship. And after that, realized it was something more.
So there's a little something to that. Like around the time that you guys started dating, your running careers also sort of changed and evolved for both of you, I think. I know, Adam, you really had been a marathon specialist for a while. And Katie, I think that you were more in kind of the half marathon zone. That was your comfort zone. And since you guys have come together, what you're doing has changed and evolved quite a lot. So let's talk about where you are just in the past maybe 3 or 4 years as runners, from kind of that origin story to the kind of events that you're doing now. Adam, why don't we go to you first? From marathon to around that time is when you started getting into ultras.
Yeah, so when COVID hit, I kind of went from a very strict training plan of speed work on Tuesdays, tempo Thursdays, long run Saturday, Sundays. And I kind of just went into I might as well run long every day because I had extra time. And then I did a couple virtual races. I did one on the towpath that was a 12-hour challenge where you just had to run 5 miles. And then you had to come back and check in on Zoom. And then you could go back out, run 5 more miles. So I did 70 miles that day in those 12 hours. And then from there, I had a couple people reach out to me. And that's right, we did the last one standing, the more miles challenges, where you did, at that time, it was 1 mile every hour. And for, I think, 50 hours the first 2 years. And then it went to tiebreaker rounds. And I think the first year I ran 77 miles in the 56 hours, and then kind of just grew from there and started loving the long distance piece to it. And we had a couple of people that reached out to me, and I was invited to be on the CVAC team for the JFK 50 miler. And at that point, like even after doing the 70 miles, the thought of running 50 miles at one time without stopping was still like a daunting task. So that was good that I had someone else to believe in me to encourage me to do that. So I did that, and then I decided beforehand if that one went well, I would try a 100 miler, and it went well. So then I was stuck doing the 100 miler, and that went well. So then I did 189 miler. That didn't go so well at the end, but I'm back to doing 50 milers, and in April I'm going to do the Canal 100 again. So pretty excited about that. I went from running short marathons, is that possible to say? Is that to ultras, right? So that's what I like to do now. So
awesome. Now, Katie, what about you? Because you have been pulled into this now too, and you mentioned that you ran your first marathon 16, 17 years ago. And so where are you now? Because you've now gone marathon and beyond.
Yeah, whenever Adam and I met, like I mentioned that I only raced usually maybe once or twice a year. I would do a local 5K, something easy to travel to. And the problem with that with me was that I didn't know people in the running community. I didn't know. So I would go by myself to a race. I'd show up by myself. I'd race by myself, which is fine, that part. But then afterwards, I would know maybe a couple acquaintances and say hi, but I didn't really have any friends doing it. And so racing wasn't a lot of fun because it was just the race. But I always enjoyed doing it. And then sometimes I would pick a certain goal race. After that marathon, I believe that marathon was 2004, but so it's almost 20 years ago now. However, but my goal race, my long goal race, the big one would be a half marathon usually. So I did Pittsburgh after about 7 months after my youngest daughter was born. And, but I just didn't make very many plans because I didn't have anybody to do those things with. So that makes a big difference for me. Now, though, ever since I met Adam, I started racing a lot more. When we first started dating, I actually told him I hated racing. I would love to go like watch him, but I just put a lot of pressure on myself, and I found it stressful. But the more I did it, and the more people I got to know, and would recognize faces at races, and like people who we wanted to hold conversations with, not just say hi and go about your way. That made it so much more fun for me. And then on top of that, I was seeing all these people do these amazing things, like things that I never thought about. And when I guess I got to a point where I was like, okay, this is the year. I'm going to put in the time to train for another marathon. Once I was with Adam and seeing, again, all these people do amazing things, run these long distances, things I couldn't comprehend. It's like, okay, surely if all these people can do this, I can put in enough time to run 26.2. And I decided to do that. And that was at the very beginning of the year. And then Adam ended up doing his canal run and getting rhabdo and being in the hospital. And that changed all of his plans for the JFK 50. So a few weeks before the JFK 50, he knew he had to let go of the dream of racing that year, but he still wanted to compete. He still wanted to participate. Thank you. He still wanted to participate in it. So I said, well, how can I make this a win for him still? We never get to run races together because we're at such a different pace, and ability level. So I said, well, what if I ran it with you? Would that make it fun for you then? Because he's not used to running at the back of the pack and having the fun and taking your time with these races. So, and he kind of ignored me right then and didn't say much. So I was like, okay, I got my answer. He's not ready to let go of the dream. And a couple days later, he came to me and he said, well, would you really do JFK with me if we can still get you a bib? And I was like, yeah. And 10 minutes later, I had a bib and was signed up 9 days before JFK. And ready to go. So, I mean, ready to go is a stretch. I wasn't really, I was a little
Committed.
I was committed. I was a little nervous and not really sure what I got myself into. I had only done my 16-mile long run up to that point because my marathon was coming up in December. It ended up being exactly 2 weeks after JFK. We did discuss that would kind of mess up my marathon training because I wouldn't be fully recovered by the time the marathon came about. But I said, well, sometimes opportunities present themselves. They change your plans and you just have to roll with it. And what I look back on is I'm really glad I was training for a marathon, or else I wouldn't have been ready to run JFK. If I had just been doing 5Ks or a half marathon, I don't think I would have been confident I could finish it. So anyway, that was the long version of how I get what I'm doing now. I ran JFK. I had a magical time. I loved it. It was so much fun. We ate all the food at the aid stations. We talked to all the people we ran into. We laughed and we ran with Adam and I and our friend Robert Kelly. And it was just so much fun. And I'm hooked on it now. Then we've done things like Miner's Lady and Rick's Run, which are the timed loop courses, 8 hours both of those are 8 hours. But I really found that I like that too, because you go out and you can be successful just running a couple loops, or you can run as many as you way more than you think you're going to. So I've really enjoyed pushing myself in that way now, not necessarily having to run fast, but trying to complete a distance as a goal has, I don't know, it's just become a really attractive challenge for me recently, which I never could wrap my head around running 50 miles. Even as a runner, when I first moved to this area and heard of the JFK, because it's, hometown 50-mile race, I didn't believe people actually did that. I couldn't comprehend it. And now it's like, I don't know, I guess it's just proof of perspective. Your perspective changes when you surround yourself with certain people doing things.
Yes. So that's a big piece of sort of where I wanted to go with this conversation, is the way it's impacted your story, I think, is the way that you guys have impacted a lot of people. So you two are the administrators of this 100-day run streak group on Facebook. And to be clear, it kind of started as a group for run streakers, but you're very open and welcoming to everybody, people who like to run, whether or not they're currently doing a streak or currently trying to do something. So as an online community, it's huge and it's very connected. It's probably mostly local-ish people. It's very supportive. It's very welcoming. And at some point, probably 2020, 2021-ish, it started to become, in addition to an online group, a little bit more of a real life community too. And I think that's really been you guys. And I think what has evolved into Too Low Run Company now, and what you're doing now, is developing a community in real life that is encouraging people to come out and run, encouraging people to go to races, to feel supported and cheered on, regardless of whether they're at the front of the pack or the back of the pack, or doing the 5K or doing the marathon. So tell us a little bit about how that evolved from this online community. Is pretty long and well established. It had been an online community for years and years and years before it really became a real life community and what you've grown it to now. So where did that transition come in? What inspired you guys to take it into real life and kind of build more of a real life in-person community and network?
So the 100-day running club was established a while ago by someone else, Kevin, who had it, and he was the administrator of it, and then he kind of passed it on to me, and then so we took it over from him. And for a long time, that was actually like the only reason I ever went on Facebook, was just for that group, and I would interact with those people, and that was it. And then we decided, one day, I don't know, we were just talking, we were like, let's try to get everybody together for a run on the canal, and then when we're done there, we'll go to Cushwa and drink a couple beers or talk to everybody, and we'll see. And I think we had 10, 11, maybe 12 people come to that first, just like you said, local people. and we just met up. At the time, I really enjoy running with other people and talking to them, and I'm pretty good about running almost any pace with anybody who, is able to come out and run. I'll run and talk to them. And at that time, Katie hated running with other people. So for her, it was like stepping out of her comfort zone. For me, I look forward to it.
I had extreme, I mean, maybe not extreme, that's a little dramatic, but I had anxiety about running with other people. Like, what if I wasn't fast enough for them? What if I was holding them back? Like, I just used to be a solo runner, run by myself. That way I wasn't affecting anybody else. Nobody was affecting me. What if they wanted me to talk while running? What if I sounded out of breath? Like, I worried about everything to do with it. And I ended up, that first run I ran with Shelby Molesty, and it went really well. She pushed me a little fast for what I wanted to do while talking. So I'm sure I sounded really out of breath, but it was really enjoyable. So that was my first step, I think, to running with other people.
But I think that's what makes like us when we first started, what made it like a good fit for a lot of different people was because I was the outgoing one. And, so some people who came might be outgoing as well. And then other people are like apprehensive about coming, and Katie could kind of relate to them and I could relate to the outgoing people. And so we kind of understood both perspectives of it. And, we really do try to get everybody to feel welcome. That's like our main thing when people come. And when new people come, I have to like stop myself from tackling them because I want to go introduce myself and talk to them and see what their story is. But yeah, so that first time when we had the first run, we did another one, I think maybe a month later, and then we kind of realized that there is a group of people, a need for community runs in this area, and we can get people to come out and run with us.
Yeah, it seems like Frederick has a really good organization. They have the Frederick Steeplechasers there, and they do so many events, pub runs and races and just breakfast runs. They do all kinds of things. And we would talk about it and say, well, we're right by Hagerstown and Martinsburg. There has to be a big community of runners, but where are they? Why don't we have something like the Steeplechasers? Now that's extremely established and really complex things that, we're not talking steeplechaser status or anything like that, but we thought, well, if we could get some people together running and just there has to be something, some way to get some more community here and not have to drive all the way to Frederick to be able to have those bigger group runs or just runs that anybody can show up to. So it's always weird because we'll be driving somewhere and somebody will be running on the side of the road and we're like, here's a runner. Who is it? Do you know them? Oh, we don't know them. Why don't we know them? We want to know them. We wish we did know them. Like, so yeah. And sometimes it's Lauren and Shelby running.
Yeah. And vice versa.
Yeah.
Well, I think I met you all through, I don't think it was an actual run that was hosted, but I knew of you through social media. I can't remember which channel it was, but it seems like you've got such a wide reach, and it's inspiring, not just individuals and runners and people there in the local community, but as far out as where I am and the Carroll County area and West Virginia. And so is that part of, like, as time has gone on, has that just become part of like how you operate now with your daily life? I mean, it seems that you've got a lot going on from not just like the running aspect of your lives, but just the social aspect. And now if we put in the business part of it too, kind of talk a little bit about how the social and kind of bringing people together has kind of grown in time for all of you and how it plays a part in your life.
I would say when you mentioned knowing people out like where you are in Carroll County, and then we know people like in the middle of the state. We know a lot of that's from races that we've put on, and it's really amazing when you're putting on a race like Fire on the Mountain, especially is that's how we know Gino and from Carroll County, and people step up to help. when they're not even asked to, or they want to volunteer or just talk. And it's amazing how well you can get to know somebody so quickly in a race type environment. Like, you want to tell about Fire in the Mountain? Like, yeah.
So Fire on the Mountain a couple of years ago, I had the pleasure of getting 2 flat tires the day before the race, which is pretty hard to do when you have to set up a course that's 17 miles long. And Gino had come to camp out, and he just pulled up his car at the right time. And he was like, he got out of his car, and he's like, what can I do to help? So from there, now we are like really good friends, and that's how we know most of the people in the Noka area. So just through, like Katie said, our races, and then just going to other races, and being involved. I think last year we both ran over 20 races. So like, along with putting on our own, going to run races, the pub runs that we put on, like, we meet a bunch of different people. And then go ahead.
And I'm just going to add that social media helps with that, because Scott, like you said, I knew of you because of social media, but I feel like the first time I definitely knew I saw you in person was at WMRT running. And like I said, your Ravenswood shirt. So just putting faces and names together in real life then kind of opens up the comfort to, I don't know, reach out, whether it's over social media, just to chat about like a running or fitness related either event or accomplishment, or when you see somebody in real life, then you're like, oh my gosh, I know you from Instagram, or I feel like we've talked on Facebook, but I'm Katie and it's so nice to meet you. Thanks for coming out. So it really has, that helps bring it all together, because even there's some people that we know that just really we met through races, but social media helps tie everything together and keep in contact and, celebrate each other's wins whenever we don't really see each other very often.
So maybe this kind of answers my next question. Just hearing you guys talk about how races have really connected you to so many people and helped to develop relationships. But at what point, so Fire on the Mountain was the very first race that you took over and put on, even before Too Low Run Company was officially a thing. Now, this year, you're putting on 6 or 7, maybe more.
5
events
of our own, and then we're helping you with Last One Standing, and then we're helping with 3 others.
So what inspired you then, taking it from sort of a social network and a community interest to a full-blown business that is not just putting on a race or 2 a year, but really you're busy all year long from end to end. So how did that evolve?
So when I agreed to take over Fire on the Mountain from Kevin Spalding, he was finished with like the racing world, I guess you could say. He was ready to move on, and he was going to just kind of give the race up, and just not have it anymore. So I had ran it 3 straight years before I was able to win it in the 4th year. So that's what we joke around now, is if you win the race, you'll get to take it over. So because I took it over from him after I finally won it the 4th year. And from there, I just realized that if nobody put on these races, then there wouldn't be races for us to run. And with Fire on the Mountain, especially like that one, it took a lot of like hard effort to get to where I was before I was able to win it. So I didn't want anyone else to miss out on like the personal experience and the joy and the achievement that I felt when I finally won the race and finished. Even the other years when I didn't win, I didn't want people to miss out on that pain and suffering of going up that red trail, that I had. So I took over. We took over that race. Katie was very supportive of me jumping into a race directing role that I had absolutely no idea what I was getting myself into that first year. And then after Fire on the Mountain happened, it was just like after I ran my first marathon. I was in love with race directing. So we talked about it and we looked for another race that we could put on. And that's where Lock to Lock came from. I literally just went out to Williamsport one day, started at Lock 44 and ran towards DC. And I was running a half marathon that day, and I got out there about 6.5 miles, and there was the other lock house, and I turned around and ran back. And then on the way back, the idea hit me. I just ran lock house to lock house, so let's call it Lock to Lock. And that's how we got our second race. That's how that evolved.
And we had been throwing around the idea of putting on a marathon, half marathon, potentially 10K, which is what it ended up being. But around a time that would be good to train for JFK, because Adam, having run JFK and then just loved the experience. This was prior to me ever running JFK, but he said it would be really nice to have a marathon in a time frame that would be along the C&O Canal, because you spend over a marathon on the C&O Canal during the JFK race, but it could be a supported training run for people who are training for the race, or it could be a goal race for other people. So, and then the half marathon being included as a no-brainer for that. But that's why we came up with it. He came up with the name then, and it just all kind of fell together. But after we put on Fire on the Mountain the first year, then we came up with Lock to Lock, and that went off very well for a first-year race. The second year, we did Fire on the Mountain the second time, and right after that, we were thinking, well, since we have these two races and we plan to keep them going, we probably should come up with some kind of name or blanket business, something to kind of umbrella over top all the races. And if we had some other things in mind, of course too. So we figured if we made a business, and then that would allow us to know. Okay, I'm misspeaking here, but let me start over. So the business would allow people to know that this race, whatever other races we do, they're all put on by the same organization, so that if there's any questions about them, they know who to come to. And then we did think that, well, maybe if we do that, we could start doing some pub runs or some just group runs, trying to get community involvement. I do want to see.
When we approached Cushwan Interchange about the Tiki Trot, the 5K and the beer mile, one of the things that they had on their list, and one of the things we had on our list, was the idea of the pub runs. So it was a perfect fit. So we decided to do one Thursday at Cushwa, one Thursday at Interchange, and then we added another Thursday at Antietam. So we're at each of those three breweries on Thursdays in the month. But they were on board with it, and basically, yeah, we just go there and run.
Yeah, we wish we could do more, but schedules
at this at this stage, you guys have a huge variety of races on your palette. You've got all the way, so Fire on the Mountain, for people who don't know, it's a 50K, 25K trail race, pretty difficult trail race. Then you've got Lock to Lock is the marathon, half marathon 10K, which is the opposite. It's flat, fast, completely different environment. We work together on the Last One Standing Challenge, which is a backyard ultra. And then you've got a beer mile and a 5K with the Tiki Trot. And now you've also got some half marathon, 5K, and 25K with the Howard's Run mixed in there. With that huge variety of different types of events that you offer, what do you love most about race directing across such a broad spectrum?
So I think we're both pretty good about running all those different distances, so we can kind of understand how our participants feel during the race or after the race. I absolutely love watching people achieve their goals, or when they finish, when they cross the finish line. And I don't know, like 3 or 4 different times I've teared up, like watching people come across the finish line. And like last year at Lock to Lock, our time cutoff is pretty generous. I think it's 7.5 hours. And we had a guy that finished in 7 hours and 27 or 28 minutes. And like, he came across the line and just like started bawling. And then I was crying, and like, it doesn't, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I just love seeing people do things that they didn't think they could do. So, I mean, that's my favorite part that goes into it. Definitely the reward of that.
Adam has never met a runner or a person in general that he doesn't want to talk to about running. He loves all things running. He loves to run with people. He loves to talk about it. And he has told me so many times that he goes, I just want to be at the finish line, and I want to be able to talk to every finisher, and I want to be at all the packet pickups, and I need to talk to people, and I want to hear their stories, and I want to hear, like, neither one of us would judge a goal or a performance or anything like that. We love to see people out there participating, and some people's goals are just to go out and like have the most fun that they possibly can. And some people just want to participate, and some people love the social aspect, and then other people have a very strict goal, a time goal that they want to achieve. And whatever it is, we love to see those people meeting those goals. I think my favorite part is kind of what I talked about earlier, is knowing people in the community and having that common bond with them. Like when I go to other races, for instance, I went to, you were running Freedom's Run, and he was doing the marathon that day. So I dropped him off at the marathon, which is point to point, so it starts somewhere else. And then I went in to run the 5K in the town, and I showed up at the race by myself again, kind of reminiscent of my past. However, I go there and I see so many people I know, from former students that I used to teach to so many bros and bras, jumping in pictures of people. It was so much fun, and I didn't have my crutch of Adam there at the start with me. So that's what I love about race directing, is just meeting all the people and talking, and then seeing them at other events that aren't even part of what we're putting on, but maybe participating in.
So I've got a 2-part question. Before I ask the question, it just sounds like, I'm never going to say that I'm busy anymore, because you two just sound like, not only are you just super busy, but you have fun doing it, and just, I mean, you just enjoy every aspect of it. But I guess the question is what is the biggest challenge? I mean, from a business standpoint, not only that, but I mean, you're training your runners yourself. You've got a life and other and jobs, and not only the challenge, but is there anything that you would want runners, listeners, to look under the hood of being a race director, and maybe there's something you wish they would know about it, right? So kind of that's the 2-part question there.
You want me to take the first part? So with the biggest challenges, I was listening to probably an older Nick Bear podcast the other day, but I think he was talking about, and I'm probably going to mess this up. I do that with analogies all the time. But if you think about like marathon training, you have speed work, you have long runs, you have tempo runs. And he said, like on race day, if it all comes together, it's like a symphony. Like you go to a concert and everybody's playing their part, right? So our biggest challenge is like everything coming together. Like we have t-shirt vendors, we have medal vendors, we have sponsors, volunteers. So that is very stressful for me. I have a hard time delegating and trusting that, like, if you're going to be at this aid station at 4 p.m., you're going to be there, So I had to learn that like right away, pretty, like the trusting part of it. And if everything goes off perfectly, then it's great, right? And everything works out well. Some things can happen and people won't notice. Other things, like if you don't have water at the race, that's a huge mess up, right? So, I mean, the biggest challenge for me personally was like delegating tasks and then like trusting that they were going to be done and done correctly.
And to speak on that, for instance, we are dependent on other people. Like, we are dependent on volunteers to help. And we're so appreciative when we get volunteers because they don't have to be out there. Also, things like the medals Adam mentioned. For instance, Fire on the Mountain medals this year, we were tracking them down at the post office. Multiple people involved were calling the post office. We were going to try to drive to DC to intercept them. They didn't come in until the morning before the race. I had to go to the post office. They actually had them at the local post office, but I had to go pick them up, get them I think they got them off the truck to get to me whenever I got to the post office. And we were just in a panic, and it sounds like, oh, well, it's just a medal. But for Fire on the Mountain, these people just completed this tough technical trail, 25K or 50K. I would be embarrassed to not have their medal for them. And it was a very stressful situation. Luckily, it worked out. Nobody knew any better except until we told them the story and they're here and they're beautiful and they were perfect. They were wonderful medals, but you're dependent on all kinds of people, the person producing them, the person shipping them, and then the shipping company, which we all know can get in the way. So you're really putting your race into a lot of people's hands to not only help you out, but also deliver on what they're supposed to do. And so people don't really see those kinds of things behind the scenes. And I guess the other challenge is just making all those decisions that will keep the runners safe and happy. I think that's important to us. So you're never going to please everyone. I think I think everybody knows that as a general rule, but we really try to. So that's a challenge.
So that maybe kind of answers that second part of the question a little bit, but is there anything that you wish that runners knew about, maybe not even your races specifically, but about the job of race directing and what goes on behind the scenes? What do you wish that runners knew?
I would say I wish people knew how much we actually care about the race. Like, we really pour our heart and soul into the race. We care more about the experience and providing safety and all the things people are looking for, like what they need at aid stations and after the race, and their happiness with what the t-shirts look like or the medals look like. We really do care about all that. And I would think most race directors do care about that, but we would sacrifice some of the bottom line any day to make a better event for the people who are participating. So I don't know. Maybe people do know that, but
I was just going to say, I think that's a great answer, but I think it's also very apparent. It's not something that you need to tell people because you show it. You stand behind it.
One thing that I'll say is like being a runner, and all four of us are runners, right? And I would say that it's much easier to train for and run a race than it is to race direct and execute. Our race in November, Fire on the Mountain, we start planning for that a day or two after the last year's race. So permits have already been submitted, etc. So like it's a 9, 10, 11, 12 month out job. The race is over and we start thinking about next year. So like I said, I love race directing, but it's so much easier to wake up on race morning and go run a race than it is to race direct a race, for sure.
For sure. Well, you're focused on yourself and your job for that day. Whereas as the race director, you're not focused on any one person. You are responsible for the people, the runners, the volunteers, like right. The entire show. And that's a lot. It's a big project.
Stressful for sure, but a good
for sure.
stress, I guess.
So I want to queue up just a little bit the biggest, I won't say the biggest race, but the maybe the biggest project that we have together, because it's 32 hours long on the low end.
Right.
It's the Last One Standing challenge that's coming up June 1st. We work on that together. We host that together. I want to maybe circle into what, if there's anything that you want to tell people about that event before we get into, we have kind of a final 10K round of questions. I do want to have you guys back before we get to that event so that we can talk, maybe put the coaching hat on a little bit and talk about preparing for an event like that, what goes into performing well on a day like that from the athlete perspective. But let's talk a little bit today about from the race director perspective. What do you enjoy about this race and this format? And what could you say that's unique about this event coming up?
Definitely with the 1 mile version, especially last year, like I think we all learned that you can get to know the competitors really, really well, because at most they were moving for 20 minutes and then we kind of had 40 minutes to sit around and talk for a while, especially while the 4 mile guys were out and girls were out doing their thing. So we had a lot of time talking to the 1 milers. So that was really cool. We had a campfire. We sat there and roasted marshmallows and hot dogs. And the 4 milers, they kind of take care of themselves. They run their 50 minutes and then they get over to their camp and get taken care of, and then they're back on the line. So, and then we talked a lot afterwards to them, but during the race, they were focused, and it's 2 different races, completely different aspects and running there. So
I think when we talk about like the community and the social aspect of running, this race kind of encapsulates that the 4 milers who are running 4.2 miles every hour on the hour, I think they become very closely connected with each other because they're out there sharing loop after loop after loop after loop together. And then that 1 mile event being kind of the party that we all get to hang out at camp around the campfire and talking and chatting and getting to know each other. It's a very social, community-oriented event.
Yeah,
I think that's a lot of the fun of it.
One of my favorite aspects is definitely, I know when I ran the virtual events, we kind of had an online group where we could kind of go in there and like, we would playfully talk to each other.
But smack talk a little, yeah.
but it really heated up when we got to the overtime part. So and that's the exciting part, when we add the mile per hour, and you really see these athletes who are tired, physically, mentally, emotionally, and then they're still out there pushing themselves, and they're trying to get to that 5th mile in the hour or 6th mile in the hour. And then last year, our winner of the 4 mile race went to 16 hours. So I would say, like, everyone that was in that did a fantastic job. But for me, it really got interesting when we were at the 11th hour, the 12th hour, and people are dropping off. And then we're encouraging people to keep running and try one more loop. And they go out there and then they do 3 more loops because they didn't think they could go another step. But then they just did 12 more miles. So I like that competitive part. Playfully, not playfully, whatever, but where we're pushing each other to, continue to get to your best.
And I love the 1 mile race, how anybody can do the 1 mile race. It's didn't you used to call them the backyard ultra for mortals or something?
For mortals, yeah, we still call it that.
I mean, that's
for everybody.
That might have been my first introduction into putting in a lot of mileage and a couple days worth of hourly running, because I think the first year I went 43 hours and did what I'd never put in that many miles in 2 days in my life, and but it seemed attainable because it was only 1 mile at a time. And last year we had some people who were running every mile and they were done in 10 minutes or less, and then we had people out there who were just walking every mile and they lasted 20 hours or so. So
think 23 hours.
Right.
Yeah, so it's really encouraging. I love seeing people at different levels and different strategies and how they attack that.
I can't wait.
So yeah,
It's gonna be
Scott's
fun.
talking about coming to compete this year. It's hopefully his primary goal for the season this year.
Awesome.
So again, we'll come back and have a podcast episode specifically about that race, because there is really a lot to understand about the format of the event as a competitor. And I think it's very interesting to talk about too, how to train and prepare for that style of an event. The Backyard Ultra is kind of unique in our niche sport that's already a little bit niche. It's a further its own thing there. So okay, to wrap us up, we do a final 10K round of questions. This is really more about you guys as athletes, you guys as people, more so than so you can take your race director hat off. So we will ask for each of you. Scott, do you want to go ahead and start?
Yep, I'll go. Okay, so for each of you, what's your preference? Road running or trail running?
Road running, definitely. I fall too much on the trails. I don't pick up my feet when they get tired, and it's a bad combination.
For me, I would definitely say road running as well, unless you're going to let me pick the canal.
Okay. I think the canal is a road,
Okay.
personally. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not a trail. We'll
No.
say that.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so let's say on a training run, are you headphones or no headphones?
Headphones.
No headphones.
No.
Katie, what are you listening to? Music or talk?
Most of the time, music. What I do is usually play out a playlist until I can't stand it anymore, and then I find a new one. But only recently have I started listening to podcasts. I didn't even know how to do it about a year ago, how to find podcasts. And then I've listened to a lot of yours, and well, that's probably the most one that I've listened to. But one day I was listening to a podcast by More Miles, and here comes Lauren running right beside me, and it was so weird to hear her in my ear, and then here she's running up on me on the canal that one day. So, but yeah, when I find a podcast that, especially listening to you guys because I'm familiar with you, and so I'm like, oh, okay, and you've had EPI on here, and so many people that like I'm also familiar with, so that keeps my attention really well. Where if I don't know who I'm listening to, I kind of can zone out. So mostly music.
So just imagine when you listen to yourself on the More Miles podcast on your next run.
So embarrassed. Oh, I can't believe I said that.
Oh.
Okay. What's one quirky thing you do before a race?
Okay, so my quirky thing is I usually put my left sock on first and then my left shoe on first without touching it with my hand. So it's already been like untied and loosened. And then I put my right sock on, and then my right shoe on, and then I tie them tight. The purpose behind that is like I start with my right foot on the starting line, so my left one crosses first. I know I'm getting your looks right now. I just said, but if
That's just so specific.
I mess up, I'll start all over again. So
Wow.
but this was like probably like really from 2012 to 2019ish, 2020. And then I think one time I like got in the middle of the race, and then I realized that I didn't do it, or I forgot, or I messed it up, and I still like ran really well. So then I was a little bit more like lenient on my weird pre-race thing, but that's it. I own it. It's cool.
Okay.
So if you are in a race where you have to change shoes, do you have to do the same ritual when you change your shoes?
No, I'm trying to think like when I changed at JFK. That's the only time I've ever, well, I guess I changed during the 100 and the canal run, but no, I didn't do it then. No.
Okay. It's just the start.
Yeah.
The first shoe.
Right.
As far as
All right, Katie.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I am not superstitious at all. I don't even worry about. I a long time ago felt like superstition was like too much stress on me to worry about things. So I don't have anything like that. But I told Adam, I was like, I don't have anything quirky pre-race. And then he said, yeah, you do. I am way opposite of Adam, and I start planning my race day outfit. And if it's a long race, if I need to pack fueling or what vest I'm going to wear, what hydration I'm going to take, before a race, I probably start about a week in advance. Adam sometimes wakes up the morning of and throws things in a bag and goes out the door. I plan a week in advance, and I probably check the weather every few hours for 2 weeks in advance. So I'd say those are probably my little things that I do pre-race.
But you are one of those runners who always has a great outfit. Your shoes probably match with your shirt or your hat or something. There's always coordination going on there. So it's working for you.
Well, thank you. I've always been really afraid of cold too. And recently it seems like the longer race, well, I think that's just natural. The longer races are in colder weather. And then I worry that I'm going to be cold for so many hours. And then what if I have these layers? So I start planning, but then everything has to match. And you can't just put two colors together that don't work, Adam. So, yeah, I don't know. I put probably too much thought into that part of it.
It's working. I saw a picture of Adam out there running the other day in the ugly Marine Corps shirt with the people, the photos. So he doesn't care.
No, I don't.
There's been 2 reels we made recently, and they were 2 different days, but it just so happened he had that same shirt on both times.
That is the worst. It's the ugly Marine Corps shirt.
When I want to be seen, I wear that shirt, so that way I know I'm not going to get hit by a car.
That's true. What is that? Okay, next question. This is actually Michelle's favorite question. If you could pick 3 people to be on your 4x4 relay team, who would you pick? And it can be anybody, living or dead, celebrity or person you know. You've got a choice of anybody.
So when I read this question, it says 4x400 relay teams. So I don't think I read it correctly because I assumed you meant 400 miles. So I picked.
Okay, who's your crew?
Yep. Harvey Lewis, Michael Wardian, and then my boy Fogel, Jonathan Ladsing, and then me. So I figured we were each going to be running 400 miles, and then we would go from there.
Of course, that's how you would interpret a 4x400 question. All right, Katie.
On my team, I much like Adam and my difference in strategy of racing, like he wants to run his best and beat other people, and I just want to have fun most of the time. If a win comes along, then so be it, but most of the time I just am concerned about meeting my own goal and having fun. So my fun team, I've Molly Seidel, and if you saw her on Instagram on her turkey trot, she wore a turkey costume, so that's definitely somebody I'm putting on my team. Des Linden seems like she'd be a good time. I'm going to put Laura Green from Instagram. She's a comedian and runner. And so
you are going to have a good time.
We're going to have a good time, exactly. And if I could choose an alternate, I'm choosing Farrah Douglas, because she's full of grit. She can do any race, whether it's 400 miles like Adam's team is doing or a 400-meter beer mile. She would be in. So she's my alternate.
I hope she listens all the way through, because that's a top-notch list to be included on. I love it.
Favorite running snack? On the run, before or after? Doesn't matter.
Mine before a run would be Cheez-Its. And then I guess afterwards would be like pasta, any type of pasta. I usually don't eat like during a run, maybe a gel or something. But yeah, Cheez-Its before and pasta afterwards.
Yeah, Adam got his first time getting to enjoy aid stations at JFK whenever he ran it with me that year. So that was a whole new experience for him. For mine, it's Fritos scoops. I love those. Like during the race, after the race, that's real salty snack. And Mountain Dew. Not during usually, but after. But that sometimes during, it depends on the length of the race, but that salt and then that sugar and caffeine, yep. Oh my gosh, it just does something for me. So that's probably mine.
I'll dig
Okay.
it. I dig
Nice.
it. Okay, last question in our final 10K. If you could give your 20-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Okay, 20-year-old Katie was a mess, but I would probably say to keep it simple. Don't worry, be happy. It's all going to work out, and you're going to find the life you're meant to live. So
I love it.
Nice.
Mine would be to have some confidence and believe in yourself, and just go out there and have fun.
Very good.
I love it. That's a perfect ending note. Thank you guys so much. So give us a rundown real quick. Where can we find Too Low Run Company online? And also give us a quick rundown of the races that you have coming up for 2024.
Online, we have our website is toolowrunco.com. We're on Facebook and Instagram.
What's your race lineup?
Instagram.
Oh, the Instagram handle is at toolowrunco. Same thing. Keep it simple. So you can find us there. We have events made up on Facebook for our races that are coming up. Also, events are made for the pub runs if you're trying to check those out. But all that information can be found on our website too. So everything kind of interlinked, so you can find all of it in one location or another. And then our races.
Give us a quick, I forgot, before we get to races, I forgot about the pub runs. Give us a quick, so every 3 out of 4 weeks, you guys are doing a community pub run. It is free and open to the public. This is just a social group.
Yep.
So give us a rundown on those, where they can find you throughout the month.
For the pub runs, it's just us gathering people together. Just meet us at 5 p.m. on the certain Thursday at the particular brewery. We are, the first Thursday of each month is at Cushwa Brewing in Williamsport. The third Thursday is at Interchange, which is in the same complex, just a different building. And that's the third Thursday of every month. And then the fourth Thursday, we're at Antietam Brewery in Hagerstown. And so every once in a while, we throw together something on the second, or if there's a fifth Thursday. For instance, in February this year, we're going to do on the fifth Thursday actually falls on Leap Day. So we're going to do a group run in Martinsburg. And all that information's on our, attached to our Facebook page, and an event's been created for that. But it's completely free. All we do is we meet up at 5. We take a group picture for anybody who wants to be in it. And then we run anywhere from 1 to 4 miles is what usually occurs. And, we start as a group, and sometimes people running at different paces break off into either smaller groups or individuals, but then we meet back up at the end. If people want, we sit down, have a drink and some food, or just social time. Some people don't stay for that part, and I think that's it. No cost or no obligation. Just come out. We'd love to have more. We have a lot of the same faces that start out. We've had anywhere from 5 to 15 on a 10 to 15 is the usual amount, I'd say. Even in the cold weather, like we haven't had to cancel one yet. So knock on wood, that continues to be the case. Did you want to add anything?
It's a good place to hold yourself accountable too. You know that you guys are going to be there on Thursday, so if you need to get those miles, show up. You've got a team to keep you accountable.
Exactly.
All right, so tell us about your race lineup for 2024.
Okay, so the Too Low events are the 43rd annual Gary Brown 5-mile race is August 17th. We just took that one over from the CVAC, Mike and Maria Spindler. And then we have the Tiki Trot, which is the 5K beer mile. And then we added a kids run for this year. That's August 24th. Lock to Lock Marathon, half marathon, 10K, September 9th. Howard's Run, 25K, 5K in Cumberland, Maryland is on September 29th. And then Fire on the Mountain, 25K and 50K is November 3rd. And then we're helping with the Harpers Ferry Half in May. That's on the 18th. More Miles, last one standing, is June 1st. And Freedom's Run Marathon and half marathon, 10K, 5K kids run is October 12th. And then we are also on the race management team for JFK 50 this year. So we'll be helping out with that as well. So
is that news that is just dropping here on the More Miles podcast?
that is news that we just dropped. Yes. There you go. You heard it here first.
Awesome. That's very cool. I'm not surprised,
Okay.
but that's very cool. Congratulations.
Thank you. So we are
all right. So
very busy. Yes.
yeah, no kidding. So we will have a link to your website, your socials in the show notes. So everybody listening has an easy way to find where you guys are and what you guys are up to. We are the More Miles podcast and the More Miles Run Coaching team. You can find us at moremilestogo.com or on social media. We are at More Miles Run Coaching on Facebook and Instagram. Okay. Thanks for joining us, guys. This was a great chat. I'm glad that we got to have you on.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate
Thanks,
it.
guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Scott.